guys. Let me pop over my camera. Can you guys see me all right?
Hey,
Yes, we
there
can.
you are.
Hey,
How's it
buddy.
going?
All right, guys. No, it's going good. I just got off of I coach water polo at my old high school. It's just like something I do for fun, but it's a little involved. So because just like we're just like driving, just a lot of driving, just to like go to different games and stuff. But other than that, I'm not driving right now, like parking safely,
Oh, yeah.
location,
Is your team any good?
We're pretty good, but we're still developing. Like I would say, we're like we're like at that range where there's like a lot of teams that are better than us, but we're like we're kind of in the top like 100 range for kind of the country. So we send like a couple kids to college each year, but we're not like we're not like winning winning the California championship or anything like that. But we're we're a good solid team for our region, and we're pretty good. So, but we're not like it's like we're just good enough that we see the teams that are like really really good. You know what I mean? Like I think that's like a very lit RPG point where you're like you're like right at that point where you can recognize that you're not just like like the local bully. So that like there's some other teams out there that are really really good. So we're like kind of I would say we're right at that point, but we're still getting better. We got some really, really good players. So we're still growing and developing. I think next year is going to be a kind of like a mini peak for the program, and I'm shooting to get us into kind of the top like it'd be nice to be the top 50 or even top like 30 or 20 range. But we'll see. It depends on how hard. That's one thing that's very difficult about high school coaching. It depends a lot on like what people do themselves in their off time, because you can only coach them for the season, and you can only like work them out over the summer. So a lot of it depends on like if people are like pursuing the game on their own, and I always just try to inspire that the excitement in the gals. So yeah.
Yeah,
So
man.
we were just discussing the pros and cons of California. I'm from California. I'm
Oh,
looking
what
to
part?
move back. Silicon Valley.
Okay, no, that's right where I'm from. I live in Fremont.
Oh, okay, I'm from Los Gatos.
Oh, okay, awesome. Okay, speaking of water polo, that's like where a lot of the really good teams are. So that's like a spot where like you're like, oh man, these are like really really good teams. So yeah,
Yeah, I went to. I mean, did you go to high school out there, or did you move
yeah,
to?
I went to Michigan San Jose.
Okay, I went to Lee High School. If you're familiar
Yeah,
with
I
it.
do know where that is. I know where that is. That's awesome.
Yeah, I lived right down the street from Los Gatos High School for a long time too. Until I moved out here. I'm in Nevada currently.
Oh, okay, very cool, very cool.
But-
Right, anything you thinking maybe moving back?
That's the plan. We want to move back. We've been here for like 3 years, and I'm ready to go back to California, probably Southern California, because the Northern California is kind of packed.
Okay.
We would like to be up to a place that's closer to the beach that isn't Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz is great. Don't get me wrong. It's just super cold.
Yeah, it is. I do like that area too. Though. Yeah, no, we go down there pretty often for like games and stuff, and that's like an area. I agree with you that it's pretty cold. It's like I think just because of it's the location with the water and so that's like a location I can see myself like. I mean, I'm very very happy in Fremont. I'm like a pretty boring guy where I just like live in my hometown writing, but that's like a location I could see myself really like if I had to move somewhere. That's like a location I could see myself.
Did you go to college locally or
No,
no?
no, that's the one area I didn't. I guess maybe that's why I don't mind the cold. I went to college in Chicago, so I went to
wow.
college in Chicago. Yeah, and then I lived there for a little bit after. So I'm like pretty used to the cold and stuff like that. But and I mostly just moved back because like my family's here and like like my community's here. But like I liked it a lot in Chicago too. So maybe I'm just like it's more that once I get used to something, I start liking it. It's maybe a better way to put it. So yeah.
I feel you
Sick.
there.
No, that's cool. We know the same stuff. We could probably discuss local joints that we've both been to and enjoy.
Okay.
Yeah. But maybe next time, because we're talking about your book.
Mm-hmm.
No, absolutely.
We got notes.
Oh yeah.
Okay, very very cool. Yeah, no, I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm really glad that you guys invited me on. I'm very very exciting for me. So no, I'm excited. I've got questions you can answer. As you guys know, we discussed this. This is a co-written book, but we were both like very involved in the process. So if there's basically any questions, I'm pretty sure either of us would be able to answer very, very comfortably. So.
Well, I'm hoping I get a couple out of left field that you're unexpecting.
No, that sounds fun. No, that sounds fun.
Mm-hmm.
So basically what we've been doing is you're literally, I mean, you are actually like our first ever person that we've had ever.
Oh, that's funny.
And I don't know if Baz explained it to you or whatever. Like we're new to this. This is like our fourth time doing this, I think. Is that right?
Very cool. Very cool.
We don't even know what our format is yet. We don't even have good cameras.
Yep.
So this is just...
me either. I'm recording this in my car. So I mean, this is kind of like in your car. I look like I'm recording a spaceship or something. But it's just so, I think that's cool. I mean, I totally get it. I mean, I feel like, in a way, it's it's kind of fitting, right? Because I think everyone's just trying to, everyone is trying to get off the ground with
something.
Yeah, something like, well, it's like like Little RPG books only been around for a short period of time anyway, so it makes sense that like talking about them, also just coming on the ground up right now. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. So basically, what we're going to try and do here is that I'm going to give a short recap of book one. So what we've been doing is that Baz is much more read than I am. I have a library of things that I've listened to for the most part and read, but Baz has a wealth of knowledge as far as like multiple books in, and so what we did this time is that I went and got Mimicking Me on Audible, and I listened to it while I work, take my notes and whatnot, and then we just discussed book ones.
Okay, awesome.
And so lately it's just been him and I going back and forth. What books have we done?
Oh, the first one we did was Fred, the utterly uninteresting and unadventurous tales of Fred the Vampire Accountant by Drew Hayes. The second one was The Count of Monte Cristo that you chose. I don't remember who wrote that one. I'm sorry.
Alexander Dumas.
That's right. And then the last one we just did was Free the Darkness by Kelcade. I like that one a lot. That one's one of my favorite books, so I'd recommended that one.
Yeah, that was. Have you heard of any of those?
Yeah, the first two. I haven't heard of the third one. I'll have to check it out.
No, the third one
is pretty good.
Really good.
Okay.
It is. It's got some badass swords.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, if you guys send it to me, I'll do my best to check it out. I'm super busy when it's the season, but we're like closing in on last 4 weeks of the regular season, and then it's the playoffs. So that's when, after that, I take like a break, do a lot of reading, and kind of refresh my, just kind of my overall, like kind of energy. And then that's when I really get started with the writing. So it's kind of like a bit of a cyclical way of of life, I guess.
Oh,
this is like your summer break. It's like your summer break. Before we dive into it, though, I said that you were at the Lit RPG Con, right?
Yeah, I was. I did.
Did you stay at the hotel?
I did, and there was a fire. I was awake. I was like awake right when the alarm started ringing. I was like, oh my god, man! I was just trying to get to sleep. It was. I tend not to travel like super well. Like I'm already someone who, like I said when we were talking earlier, I just like to stay in my hometown, live my life and stuff. So man, this trip is going pretty well. Like. Good things, nothing's going on wrong this time, and then I'm like, oh my god, what's going on? And then we got that kicked out. So
yeah, I was already asleep, and I thought somebody was smoking outside of my door or burning something outside my door, and I was like, I called the front desk, and I'm like, is there a fucking fire or something? And they're like, yeah, you should leave. I'm like, yeah, I was on the 22nd floor. I don't know what floor you. Where were you?
Man, I was pretty early. I was on like the 8th floor, so I was pretty close to it. And no, I think it was actually very high up, wasn't it? Like I think it got an elevator shaft or something. Like I remember they were telling me like they thought it was on the 6th or 7th floor when they told me to leave, but then later on they found out it was like hella high up.
It was in their storage. From what I heard, it was like in their storage area, that cot area, which was up towards the top floors.
Okay.
But I'll be honest, I've never flown down a flight of stairs so fast in my life. I'll be honest.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I imagine so, and rightfully so, right? Like you just want to get out of it. That was crazy. that was like a pretty crazy moment. And funnily enough, my plane got hella delayed on the way back and on landing. Like like when I was trying to get back to California, the what's it called? The like the tunnel that like brings you onto the plane.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one at my gate collapsed, so I had to wait for like an hour. No, thankfully nobody was like in it or anything. But then on the way back, like another plane broke down in front of my plane, like right at the embarkation. Which, like, again, these are like the best times for this type of equipment to fail. Like, you know, the tunnel when nobody's in it, or the plane like right when it lands. But I was so like, you know, thank God for that. But I was like, wait, what's going on over here, man? Why does this keep happening? So yeah, no, that was a crazy and tumultuous series of events. But it seemed like everyone had a good time. I mean, I had a good time. It was really nice to see everyone meet everyone. So it was cool overall, I think.
Yeah, no, I had a blast. I got a chance. I volunteered with the company. That's how I met Baz. I met in the game. We had a game sit down with
Ryan Reed and Jeff Hayes.
Oh, very cool, very cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, Jeff Hayes was standing by our table, and I'm like, oh my God, you know, that's Jeff Hayes. And I'm like, he must be lost. And then, and then he turns out to be sitting at our table. I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna get to spend like the next 2 hours with this guy. This is gonna be fabulous. And then I met Ryan Reed, and he's actually one of the reasons that I got Mimicking Me, because I was like, hey, I got an Audible credit right now.
Yeah, no, Ryan. Ryan, cool guy. I met. That was actually my first time meeting Jeff in person. That we talked, you know, like a semi good amount, just like online for like, you know, work stuff. But Ryan, I met like a couple years before that because, or maybe just 1 year before that because, he's a Chicago guy. So, or he was. He moved to Kansas. He was a Chicago guy, and you know, because I was there, I met him when I was back in town for a friend's wedding, so it was very cool. So yeah, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. No, they're like really good people, and I you know, I feel like obviously, you know, they put in a lot of work for the series. So obviously very grateful for that.
And I will say for Reed's part in reading The Mimic in Me, what I appreciate about his style is that you know, there's no monotone with that guy. When Damon in the book is excited or sad or confused, or like, you can really hear that come out in the way that Ryan you know, pronounces the words and he performs them. He's excited. He performs it basically instead of just.
No, I completely agree with you. And it's funny. I feel like this is like a fun part about collaboration, because I do talk to them every so often just about like, you know, when you think about certain things in the book, it's more like, you know, more just like, you know, working together. If there's like some funny moments, just sharing them with each other. And I do think that as the series has gone on, I think Damon has become in some respects you know, a cartoonish version of Ryan, just in the sense of like, there's like some things that like Ryan finds, I'm like, dang, I know this is like something that Ryan finds kind of funny. I think there's some times where Ryan definitely has, I don't mean this in a bad way, but he definitely does have like kind of like a sense of humor. And I'm like, okay, well, he would find this one funny as hell, so let me put this one in there. And kind of just as I've gotten to know like, you know, the people I'm working with, it's fun to just kind of include a little bit more of that in the book, because I do know that a lot of the people enjoy the series on audiobook. So I'm always like, okay, well, let me try to write a book that's like the best book it can be, but also and also, like, you know, obviously bring some new stuff into the series, but also be something that the audio fans will really enjoy. So yeah, it was really always good to be to talk to those guys.
Yeah,
no,
this was.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say this was my first Ryan H. Reed fully led book, where he's the main character and narrator.
It's the first book he was the main character for, I think.
Oh, okay.
Really?
Yeah, I know he's done a few other, like, you know, obviously he was a reporter before he was a narrator. He was a narrator before, like, that's how, you know, they obviously hired him as a narrator. It wasn't like his first time. But he was telling me, like, this was like my first main project with Sound Booth, and also I think it was his main project doing some of the direction and things of that nature too. So It was and this was like my first series that like got a lot of attention. So obviously it's kind of like very good, but also one where I've had a lot of fun. Like I said, learning, experimenting, getting to work better with everyone, and that type of thing. So yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Here, let me recap. I have quite. You just talk more, and I think Fayez and I both have more questions, and we're not even going to talk about the book. We'll talk about the book like in a tangible way, but let me just recap it real quick because I have questions now that you've been talking.
Oh no, absolutely.
So Mimic and Me, the way that I read it, and mind you, this is my interpretation of it. It's kind of broken up into 3 sections. You got the beginning when Damon starts off in the dungeon as the scout. You got the middle where he's kind of becoming acclimated with his new body and the Mimic, and then you got the end where it's him and kind of his newly motley crew of people who are fighting off that
Nightmare.
The nightmare wave. Yeah, the nightmare wave. The corrupted wave. Yeah, which I think there's corrupted waves in each of the books. Actually, that's not true. There's not one in book 3, but I make up for it. There's 2 in book 4. So but that's a big part of all the books in the series. But yeah, that I would say that's correct. I would say that is the overall kind of structure and plot line of what happens.
Okay. So in the beginning, when he's in the dungeon, one of the things that I appreciated about him was that he was a scout. He wasn't a fighter. He understood his station. He wasn't this like, overbearing badass fighter, or nor did he think that he would be. He understood the limitations of like his station, and he just kind of accepted them. But I like how he was clever. He used his wits more than he did bronze, and I haven't really come across too many stories where, the main character doesn't beat their way out of any situation, at least initially, right? The dynamic with the noble adventurers coming in, and the slave was a nice take, and the Mimic, the way that you were able to, I don't know if I should be talking about you or if I should just talk about the story in general. So just bear with me on that one. The way that you introduced the Mimic, you expect the Mimic to come out and be this like ravenous beast that is going to devour everybody, but he's just really interested in this piece of cake or whatever it is that he threw it his way. And I thought, cookies. Thank you. Cookies. Yeah, that shit was funny. I'll be honest. When the Mimic was introduced, I didn't know exactly how to expect it. I didn't have expectations per se, but like the way that it was introduced was clever. It was funny, and how I didn't quite get it until it was kind of explained later in the story. But like, it almost felt like the Mimic had like a split personality for a while. He was this kind of like endearing friend that just wanted sweets and to help, and then he was this monster that wanted to devour and kill everything. And it's not until a little bit later in the book that you find out that he starts to take on the personalities of the people that he absorbs. Is that true?
Yeah. So I would say that there's definitely some with regards to Chester's personality. So it's a combination of factors. So number one, taking on some aspects of the personality of people he absorbs, but also number two, that he was formerly bonded to someone for a long time, which already had like an impact on his kind of viewpoint. But I also think number three, just kind of is one of those things where it's just like being honest with like how like writing a story works. There's definitely just some like kind of early installment weirdness on like how Chester's personality was supposed to work at the time. There were a few other ideas that we had in there at the start that I think kind of just got toned out or changed just because they were like a little bit too like I was like, okay, this one might be like a little bit too off kilter, or this one might be like a little bit too like in some cases a little bit too out there, or a little bit too like derivative of other stories. So I was just like, well, we're really just like kind of like trying to like fine tune exactly how his character is like even going to work. And I think that like the aspect of like him changing his personality over time, like it's even more apparent in the audiobook where in later books he gains like different voices and things of that nature depending on who he's absorbed. But I think that in general, like some of the stuff there, it's more like what would be like. I think there's like a mix in the story where like there's humor and there's also like kind of like that sense of like, it's kind of like I think especially the first 3 books and then the conflict that appears in books 4, 5, and 6, and then later on the conflict's going to appear later on. There is like a sense of like catharsis and revenge because it's like, okay, well, first you beat the people who enslaved you, then you beat the slave empire behind that in the later books. So I feel like it's like a mix of like, how can we make this character both funny and endearing, but also make it so this character is like someone who will kind of bring out, like the darker side of make people around him like kind of worse or more like violent, but also in like a way that's like funny, but also like cathartic. Like I feel like it was just a lot of time period in that segment kind of tuning Chester's personality, if that makes sense. And I think that the elements that you identified of him being funny, of him being a glutton, of him having like this kind of like funny relationship basically with Damon, I think all of those things were just slowly refined as the story continued. Because another thing is that this story, it started with us posting it on Royal Road, so there is some aspect, I think, of that serialization in, I think especially the first 2 books, which were like really heavily on Royal Road. I think that, it was something else I learned. Like it's a little bit different from like when you write a chapter and it goes out there versus like you write and you continue tuning it over time, which did happen when we like released on Amazon. But there's stuff where I was like, oh, looking back, maybe this should have been more like that, or maybe I wouldn't have had him say this right here. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, the rewrite and then like rephrasing or just removing in general. Especially look at it, I'm sure the more, the more condensed that you got it to make it.
Oh yeah, no, there was this story. I mean, I think book 1, I believe, clocks in at 170,000 words, but a lot of that came from the process of rewriting it, because the original draft of the book was like at like 80 to 90,000 words, and then there's certain things where it's just like, okay, this needs to be redone, this needs to be expanded, this needs to be done in with a lot more detail. I actually think that the first arc of book 1, part of why people I think like it a lot, I think that's like one of the strongest, but that was also one of the ones that was rewritten the most times, because it's like, okay, how can we figure out how all the powers work? Like, I think there's also some early weirdness on his transformations. Like in book 1, he starts off, he turns into that wall to like ambush the archer, and then he also turns into a barrel to escape. But he also kind of turns invisible at the same time, and then that appears. The barrel thing appears a little bit later on, and I think there's there's like kind of like that fine tuning process, both in terms of like, number one, how much do you want Damon to transform, because obviously that can end up becoming a little non-distinct with Chester. Like, even though they technically share the same power set, you want them to be a little bit distinct. And then number 2, how do you want to play that? Because I think that there's like a few different degrees. I think that the first time he turns into a barrel, the first 2 times he transforms like both into a wall and into a barrel, it's kind of played for laughs, because the first time he turns into a wall, he's like, all right, cool, I'm hitting him as a wall, and then he's like, can we attack him as a wall? And the guy, Chester's like, wait, like, what are you talking about? Like, walls can't move. And then the other time he turns into a barrel, it's kind of like he has to turn into one to like escape very, very quickly. And it's kind of like, like in I grew up watching a lot of Hong Kong cinema, like Jackie Chan like falling into a barrel and he's like rolling out of the way. Now I'm like thinking about it again. I was like, man, maybe it could have been highlighted even more. Like maybe that could have been like the beat I was going for, rather than like the urgency, or maybe like a mix of that. So I feel like that's like another thing that got us thinking a lot of like, how do you want to portray this? Because like I think we all have like a certain idea of like mimics. We all have a certain thing we like about mimics, which is that they transform into objects. But it's also like, how do you want to play that? How do you want to balance that between him and Chester? Like, how do you want to make them seem similar or different or however? So yeah.
Sick. No, I love getting the insight into like the thought process behind it. I'm going to ask you about how it was writing with a person and how that impacted your guys' ability to be clever. Because I mean, for a lot of us that try to write, we're sitting here with our own thoughts and like, is this a good idea? And you want to talk to somebody about it, and most of those people don't care. But then you have 2 people that are invested in one story, and you can kind of bounce ideas and
It was definitely very, very good. I think that there's definitely some at times. I think that there was a lot of positives about it. Like people care about the story, a lot of iteration. Like I said, I think that's one thing that's really, really beneficial for like kind of being humorous. And actually, when I work on my own stories now, that's one thing that this taught me, which is to be very iterative. Because I feel like when you're writing a story, especially a comedic story, like I think at least when I look at the fan response to Mimic Me, or like even just talking to you guys, the response, it seems like what a lot of people like is kind of like the cleverness and the humor and the jokes and the references and things of that nature. In addition to just like, the innately the idea of a guy being stuck with a mimic is, quite funny. I think a lot of that is that when there's like a really strong basis for the story there, I was able to like kind of look at it really hard and come up with different jokes, angles, or ideas. Like I actually saw on the like like how they have like the highlighted quotes page on Mimic and Me, where it's like these are the quotes that the fans liked the most, where they highlight it. Actually, all three of the quotes were stuff that I'd actually added in the very, very last draft, which I found to be very funny. And it's because I was just so immersed in the story, and I was like, oh, this line would fit very well right here, and it'd be like kind of like a clever line. I think there's one where he gives like Chester all his food because he says that giving up like an arm and a leg is better than losing like his real arm and a leg, and people really like that one. Or man, there's like another one off the top of my head, like some of the lines where like he like quips at Chester, and it's like something funny. That's actually one that Ryan Reed was telling me about at Lit RPG Con, where he was saying that for some of the quips in the audiobook, he actually thought of some other ones that he decided to replace. Like when Chester turns into a ship in book 4, he has Damon call him like a douche canoe, which I thought was really, really funny. So that's one that actually added into book 5. And I feel like when you have that like solid basis there, you can then like riff on it. But I also think that there were a lot of things that casters just put in right off the bat that were like innately like very, very funny. Like the scene where he like yells at the Baron that he killed Alden. He's like, he cried like a bitch. Or the one where some of the basis of having Chester like steal the cakes, and he goes invisible and steals the cakes, and the lady freaks out. Like some of that comedic time, it was just
cakes.
exactly. So some of that comedic time, it was just some of that comedic writing was just there from the start. So I think that's another thing that's good, where if you're working with someone, you can kind of look at stuff, and there's some stuff that like frankly, I think this is true of everyone. I'm just gonna use like I'm just gonna use like I think it's more fair to just use myself as a negative example here. But there's definitely some times where I'm like, oh man, this would be like really, really funny, and then I write it, and then it's like, this is like a little bit off. It didn't quite hit like the tone that I was going for. Like I was trying to I remember there was a scene that ended up getting changed in I believe book 3, where it's like a scene where they're trying to like bluff their way into like a town with like Chester transforming into like various things, but like it felt like a little bit one note, so we decided to like change it up, or like maybe use some of those ideas a little bit later. I was like, okay, yeah, that's pretty good. Like this could be a good idea, this could be a funny scene, but like if it's not like quite there, then it might be better to you want to have like, in addition to having like a high joke quantity, you also want to have like the high joke quality, right? Where it's just like, oh, this is like on it, this is on it, and like that. So I feel like that's like something that's very beneficial of working together.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you have some good one-liners in there, and some good back and forth between Mimic and Damon, or Chester and Damon. Throughout book 1, I found myself chuckling a number of times.
I'm glad you like that. Yeah, a lot of those, like I said, it's funny. A lot of those are stuff that like I kind of added right at the very end, and that had a big impact on my own writing style. It made me, I think, a much more deliberative writer, because I was like, man, all the jokes and one-liners that people like, or like I'll see on the Lit RPG groups, they'll like post the quotes at each other, which honestly is very, very flattering. I'll be like, oh man, I'm really glad that they like that line. But that's the funny thing, is that's something that only came to me after I like thought about the story for like months. So that tells me that when I'm writing my other books, maybe some of the best lines I can come up with are there, or like if I'm writing like a sequel, like I'm doing with Mimic and Me right now, but also some other sequels, I'm like, man, you got to just be like, keep thinking about these characters and stories in your back time, because eventually some of these really good quips, one-liners will come out to you, because they're based on like, I think the cool thing about writing those types of quips and one-liners is that they're almost like a second level fiction thing, because it's like a funny or hypothetical line or joke that's based on fictional characters, which requires you to first develop those characters very well to the audience, and then once the audience really understands Damon and Chester, they'll then understand what makes them laugh, which then makes these quips and one-liners to them very, very funny. It makes them like the character more, and it makes them just feel like they're in on the joke with me, which is what I want. So yeah,
for sure. No, it works. It flows well. Like I said,
I'm glad. Thank you.
It's great. Okay, going to part two. I'm gonna breeze through this real quick because I think we're doing better off just talking back and forth.
Oh yeah.
Part two is just simply, Chester gets out of or not Chester. Well, I guess Chester. Damon and Chester get out of the first dungeon safely. There's some adventurers that are waiting there to they get scared into a bush, and he meets Melina. And please correct me if I'm saying any of these names wrong. He teams up with her, and they make their way back to their settlement or to their village. Estlin, thank you. Where they find that, is it the Baron? The Barons?
Yes.
Yeah, the Baron. He's waiting for them. He sees from the Adventurers Guild that this guy went out with his son and his son's friends, and now they're all gone. He wants to figure out what's going on.
Actually,
right, he's in the ledger.
It's from a tracking spell placed on Alden's bracelet or bracer that he knows something went wrong.
Yes.
Something's up. And this is actually when the barrel scene and the cake scene happen.
Yep.
Yes,
right.
Those happen on his way back when he's trying to sneak in. A little bit of that's one thing that I ended up thinking a lot about as I continued work on the story. I feel like, or just like continuing to grow as a writer in general, I feel like the first arc of him escaping the dungeon is very, very tight. But I think that the second arc, there is some chapters where I think there's a balance there that I need to get better at striking, which is that sometimes when working, and this is something that I know that just happened too, because actually for book one and most of book two, like I would say that like around 70 70% of book two, a lot of it was based on a story that he had originally written. So like I said, when he presented book one to me, it was already like an 80 to 90,000 word story where he was like, can you help me add a lot of detail and make it better? But I think that one thing that we both could have improved on, and this is something that just thinking about it now, I believe 3-4 years later, I think both of us could have, and this is something that other people have also said, so it's not even like I came up with it myself or he came up with it himself. I think there's some aspects of it where we should have been a little bit more willing to shake up the story overall a little bit, because I think that there is some parts of, I like the overall structure of book one a lot, because I think it's good that he starts book one bonding with Chester, and then they escape the lower level noble. And then I do like how in part two it's about him acclimating to his powers and eventually getting to save, this kind of like the city that didn't really scorn him, but more of like the city that kind of had a very clear hierarchy that he was not a part of. And I also like how in book three in part three he's able to figure out a clever way to escape with Melina, and also to kind of get his revenge on the Baron, albeit limited by their the different social strata that they're in. I think that overall is good, but I do feel like part two is the weakest part of the story for two reasons. I think number one, it's a little bit conflicted on how, and this is something that I think a lot, because I think that the thing that people like most about the story is the banter between the characters and the overall interaction between them, especially Damon and Chester, but also like Damon and Kristen, or later on in the story, the banter between Chester and the demonic companions that the brothers have, and just overall kind of the banter and interaction. But I think that what the two weaknesses of part two, in hindsight, after finding out what people liked, is that there's a lot of kind of stealth scenes in part two where Damon has to basically tell Chester to shut up and let him kind of live his life so that Kristen doesn't get suspicious. And I think that ends up, in hindsight, kind of weakening their relationship, because one thing that people really like about that is having Damon and Chester be more of a duo, and having people interact with them in light of that, because if you're interacting with a guy who's fused with this crazy monster, you're interacting with this really crazy guy versus just interacting with a normal guy. I think that kind of veers a little too much into kind of a standard RPG where it's mostly just there's several chapters where Damon is just training by himself basically, and Chester isn't really there. I think that's something I would have liked to have changed. And number two, I think that the scene where I think ultimately having Melina get captured and then he has to do like a re-rescue again. That does feel a little bit circular to me in hindsight. I feel like maybe what might have been better is having him be like the promise that was kind of made in chapters 9 and 10 of having him be on the run. Might have been. I think that might have led to some more exciting scenes with a better mix of like that might have been a better way to do stealth where rather than Damon like living in the open but his stealth being the secret, it might have been better to have it be that they're just living in stealth, but the party that he's living with is aware of his secrets. But I don't know. That's just something I think about a lot based on like talking to people, but also based on like looking at the story a lot. So that was kind of like a very long tangent. But yeah.
Put it in the next series that you're going to start. You know what I mean?
I think so. But I do like that. I do like I like everything that ended up happening. Like I like that he meets the bros and he gets this training and they do this stuff and the Kukuri come back in book 4 and all this stuff. So yeah. That was kind of like a long tangent. Just thoughts based on like talking to other people who like anyways.
Well, I mean that, and just to go off of that point about especially about the Kukuri is that like in that second part of the book, you know, a lot of the times a lot of other stories they just kind of gloss over the training. He's a novice and now he's an expert, and you're like, where was the struggle? And you have Christian in there like, yeah, listen, I'm gonna clear this out, and then no, you're kind of on your own, dude. You need to do that. You know, with at first it's with the arrows, like they go down to the encampment.
Yes, that's a scene that I really like. That's actually one that I did a lot of expansion on for the very reason that you said, which is that I do think it's good to expand the training, especially because that's like a scene where he talks to Kristen a lot, and he also does a lot of the mental talk with Chester, who's like making fun of him for like not shooting the arrows very hard or not using. I think that's later on where he talks about where Chester talks about how you should poison his arrows and all that stuff. But I think that those scenes are good because I don't think of them as like, it's funny. I don't think of them as like slice of life, but more like slice of, I guess, adventure. Where I'm able to. I like that I'm able to put in the work of like what would happen in the scene of him pulling the arrows, and that gets paid off later on in the story where after he learns how to properly pull his arrow, he has to remember to keep his stance up when he's battling the nightmare. But I also like how it just allows for kind of like character interaction and like basically like kind of riffing. Like when I write some of the Damon and Chester scenes, even some of the serious ones, I kind of do think about like doing like kind of like a boss fight in a video game, but you're like doing it with like your friends on Discord, like they're like watching you, because that's kind of what Chester is doing. He's just watching him do the boss fight, so he's like making fun of him for like missing the Kukuri chieftain and all this stuff, and that's something that I try to have because I want to balance that sense of like seriousness, but also add in like a sense of like I think we talked about. I don't know if it's what's in the recording or not, but you know, like we talked about it when I first was here, but like you know, I've been coaching sports for like 9 years now, so I think a lot about like that progress of improvement. I actually think it's very satisfying too, right? And also very satisfying to like read about when it's like actually like I'm actually like reading about it and seeing how this guy's improving, with also like I said that sense of like camaraderie and like in Chester's case very demented friendship. So yeah.
Yeah, it's nice just to see the MC fail consistently. Like
yes, Damon, not in a bad way, because I think one thing I really like about writing his character is I like that he's like a good-natured and determined guy who always picks himself up and he always likes to learn. But yeah, he definitely eats shit a lot, and he'll mess up in ways that like we would mess up like if we were in his situation. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Oh yeah, and that's one of the things that's one of my notes about. I wanted to point out that I specifically liked about it because
thank you. I like that. I'll have to make sure to keep it in my other series too. Thank you.
I just exactly. I mean, like I do my. I'm where you were 4 years ago. Right now, I'm writing my own story on Royal Road.
Awesome.
And my MC, yeah, I got like almost 100 chapters almost. Anyhow,
look it up. Please send it to me afterwards. I actually have a so like I said, it's frustrating because I have a lot of stuff that I want to write too, but I because of the season I end up just although it probably is ultimately for the best, like hand health wise, to take a break during
Oh
this
hell
time.
yeah!
But
Focus on that stuff.
but please send it to me. I'd be very, very interested in seeing it. And I actually have like I said, Royal Road was Mimic Me was originally a Royal Road series. I regret taking it off. I think that was a mistake by us because I think we had a lot of fans there. So I actually met some of the people who liked Mimic Me on Royal Road. And I just met other people on Royal Road at the RPG Con. So I was going to I actually have a story that I'm going to be posting on Royal Road when our season ends. It's already like I've outlined the first book, so it would be cool to like just do like shout outs and stuff like that. Like that sounds cool. I'm very
I would
excited.
love to follow. Let me know when you do that.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
I didn't bring it to shout out my thing. I brought it up just because I drag my MC. My MC gets his ass kicked consistently. I like Indiana Jones is like how I kind of akin him. It's like Indy gets his ass whooped. All that he manages to make it out, and I've just always been endeared to those kind of characters, and that's what your training scenes and with Damon it kind of reminded me of that. I'm like it's refreshing. I just like that kind of character building.
Oh no, thank you. I'm glad you like that, and that's something that I think that I completely agree with you. I think that's something that definitely is a big part of like to me at least, like obviously like just like as a general life point, like I think that like Indiana Jones is a great example of that. Or like I was thinking about this with like I said, Hong Kong cinema, like Jackie Chan and the Barrel, like some of these guys who like kind of get their ass kicked or who are even in like kind of funny or embarrassing situations, which definitely happens to them too. The fact that you kind of like pick yourself up from that and you still have like all that like dignity when it really matters, I think that makes you like that to me is like what I think of when I think of like a real badass. So I always try to have that in my stories because I also think that's a little bit more relatable, right? Like I think that you can definitely be like a like I'm just like some guy, but there's definitely some times where I'm like, damn, that was like a pretty badass thing I did. And then there's other times where I was like, damn, I really ate shit right there.
No, I mean,
yeah.
That's life.
So, yeah.
We can't all be Arnold and fucking Commando and just have all the right answers and throw all the right punches, right?
Or Last Action.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. I just watched Commando the other night over again with my wife. I was just like, man,
I only understood the concept because you were saying of throwing all. I don't know what that is. I'll have to look it up.
Oh, it's a decent movie. It's not bad.
Okay. No, I only knew what it meant because you said. I only said I was replying exactly to when you said. Like he knows all the right moves. He throws all the right punches. Like okay, yeah. Like I definitely know some stories like that. And I think those stories can be cool too. Don't get me wrong, but I do like I like having a character be like kind of like even if they're very strong. Like I think later in the Mimic Me series, definitely Chester gets very strong, but I still like that he's like, he's got his weaknesses. He's still, emotionally fallible, and there's still some moments where he's, there's like some funny moments where he's very, very dependent on Damon or the party. So yeah,
it makes it relatable.
It does, but I've always loved that you've kept the 0 charisma score of Chester consistent throughout each of the books. It makes me laugh because
that's funny.
Yeah, because there's moments in like the other ones where he's like talking to someone and he says like, "I'm gonna eat your nom noms" or something stupid like that, and everyone in the party just looks at him and goes, "Man, that 0 charisma score really is doing good for you, isn't it?"
No, it's like I think about this sometimes too because I definitely have. I think everyone has these moments, so I don't want to just pick on myself here, but I think it's a general thing. I definitely have moments where I'm like, you just get your foot in your mouth, or you're trying to like, you're trying to say like a certain thing in a conversation, and it's like I was thinking like like the chess eval bar where it's kind of like going up and down based on how good your moves are, and sometimes I'm like, man, I should not have said that there. Like I imagine like the eval bar just like swinging abruptly to like you're not getting the conversational result you wanted. And that's just like any time Chester opens his mouth. Like I'm always trying to think of like when they meet new people, I'm like, how can he like mess this up? Like when they meet the new monsters in book 4, he's like trying to give them their own names and stuff, and they're just like, no, please don't do that. Or like stuff like that. Like I'm always trying to like come up with these kind of like these goofy moments like that. So I'm glad that that's another thing that you guys liked. And like I said, I'm actually putting the finishing touches on book 5 right now. I'm about 120,000 words into it, but I'm taking a bit of a break for the season. I also realized there's some restructuring I need to do. Like I kind of yeah, I kind of wanted to center the story around a specific like kind of like specific big bad. So I was like, let me change some of these. Let me change a bunch of this stuff. But the stuff that you guys are really liking and some of the other stuff that like I hear people liking, I'm definitely going to try to make sure to kind of not just do more of it, but like kind of bring it into like a new, fun and exciting
Yeah.
direction. So yeah.
And that's the challenge, right? Like you can be goofy for making all the mistakes in the beginning, but as the character grows and becomes more confident, like you can't be making the same mistakes, but you can make new mistakes.
That's just not fun. It feels frustrating. It feels like, and I have had people say like, they're telling me like, man, I feel like Chester's character needs to be developing a little bit more. Like there are some times in book 4 where he's just kind of making the same mistakes. I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. Let me think about it a little bit more. Or there's some other times like that too, where I'm just like, yeah, that's true. Like this is like my first series that I've had, which has had such a good fan following, which I'm very grateful for, but is also, assigned to me. I was like, well, number one, I do want more series like that, but number two, I want to make sure the series is very, very good. So just got to keep evolving, keep thinking, and keep making sure that bringing the story in the direction that like people that like is exciting. Like keep the stuff that you like, but it's got to be brought in a. It's got to
Yeah,
be.
just
Yeah, it's got to be brought in. It's got to be. Like, there's got to be some growth in me as a writer, in the story overall, in the characters, all that. It's got to, yeah.
While we're on that topic of growth, real quick, I want to ask. With Kristen, when we first see him, he's kind of more relaxed at the very beginning of it, but then he goes into the encounter with the other headhunters that are coming after David, and he shows like very, very lethal cruelty to these people, like slicing off one of them right at the knees and letting them crawl away and in shock kind of deal, telling Damon, go ahead and finish that guy off. I always found that very interesting, that you started with that kind of character profile for Kristen.
Yeah. So this is one where I my where my co-author had a much bigger role in the original Kristen character. Funnily enough, I think that the ultimate growth of Kristen was much more of like a group project at the end, because he as you guys know, he originally leaves the party at the end of book 1, but that's something that I'm not the happiest about. Like that's another like kind of like Royal Road / finishing book 1 before book 2 quirk, where at the end when we were writing book 2 we were like, well, like clearly this character, there's kind of a hole in the story where this character was supposed to be, and it's like, well, like let's end up redoing that. So that was something that I did a lot of when rewriting and revising book 2. The reason why the character originally appears this way is twofold. Number one, it's to show that like he has this like, I think that the brutality of his actions show kind of the brutality of his past. Like he has like a life where this is like what you need to do to survive. That's number one. And then number two, I think that there is kind of like a there's actually a third reason too. Number two, there is kind of like a authorial reason for it, which is that I think that my co-author, and I mean this in a good way, he just likes writing these kind of very like strident, very, very ardent characters. Like if I think if people like Mimic and Me, they should definitely check out his System Keeper series, which I think has some aspects of Mimic and Me in it, but it also has some aspects of kind of like Christian's character in it, or also he's got another one that's also a buddy story. He's definitely gone into the buddy stories because I think they're cool. Like I think we both like, that was something we both really, really liked about that. He's got another one. It's Riftbound, where the companion I think is kind of like a mix of where Christian and Chester are. So kind of like not as much of the goofy side of Chester, but more of just like the ardent side. That's actually also by Soundbooth too. That's something I would recommend to people. I think people who like that would like that one a lot. But so I think that that's part of it too. Like I think he just likes writing those scenes. And then the third reason why is that it hints at the fact that Christian needs blood to use his magical abilities, which is fully revealed later on in the series. So there's kind of like a 3-part there. And part of it is, well, I think this is something that also always happens for writing, and I think that's like a cool thing, which is like I feel like a lot of world building or a lot of like character detail, it does come down to like what do you like writing, what do you have fun writing, and sometimes all that stuff can all like these, like I said, these three reasons where there's like a character reason, there's a world building reason, there's just like a personal reason. These can all like kind of tie together. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's kind of like I got a very long-winded answer to your question, but yeah, and I would highly recommend for fans of the series to check out those books. I think they're pretty cool. So yeah.
Yeah, Riftside is the next one on my list from SBT right now. I'm excited
Awesome. No, I'm sure you'll enjoy it. I think I was talking to Justin about it a little over G-Con. I think he does an amazing job with it. I think I've read some of his kind of cold reads, playing the Axe character, or I think the Hammer character that I was just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And no, I think that just recommend that for if people are listening. Recommend it to you guys. I think people are gonna like it. I've checked out a good amount of it. Like I said, I haven't been able to read too much just because of just being so busy for the season. But overall, I think it's a good one. So yeah.
805 pages, dang, for book one.
Yep.
Yeah, it's I know the Henrique is like the primary writer on that one. So he's got a number of long books out there. I was just talking to Cassius about it, and I think that's definitely going to be giving a lot of enjoyment, I think, to the listeners. I think he's a very prolific writer. So yeah.
Yeah, not to go too off topic, but you should try out Irrelevant Jack as well. It's one of the older Sound of Theater titles. But
okay.
Justin is the main narrator and the side companion, while Jeff is the main character. So it's like a nice little dichotomy between the two of there. I like that one a lot.
I'll have to check it out. No, not at all. I feel like everyone who works there is just super, super talented, super grateful to have my books done by them. So yeah.
I love them.
Let me wrap up the end of this book, and then Baz can dive into his questions here.
Okay. No, absolutely.
Okay. Basically, the end of the book is him, Damon becoming comfortable with him and Chester's melding, and them fighting off that horde, the Nightmare, I think. Yep. Is the name?
Yep. The Corrupted Nightmare.
And what I appreciate about it is that, like, he's comfortable enough to be able to do the battle, but he hasn't become this super proficient warrior that is just like, he doesn't become Legolas, sliding down an elephant's trunk while taking out orcs and stuff like that. I like how the mimic can take over his body and almost be like an exosuit of sorts, for added protection or added strength, depending on what it is that he's doing. And I just thought it kind of all flowed really nicely into the end of that battle to showcase what it is that he had learned over the course of the time with Christian and the battling of the Kukuri.
Yes.
Kukuri?
Yeah.
Kukuri. And that's pretty much it on my end. It's just that I liked that he didn't become OP by the end of the book. That he kind of got cast out. He's forced to leave. To a degree, through the deal that they made for Melina. Mm-hmm. And so it's going to force them to go off and do quests and whatnot. So I'm curious to see exactly what it goes on in book 2. The quick notes that I just want to point out real quick. I like that Melina wasn't this noble. I don't know if she is in future books or whatever, but like a lot of times you save somebody in the woods or in a dungeon early on, it's a female. It turns out that she's a princess or a noble's daughter, or some shit like that, and I'm like,
no, that's something.
I'm like, I'll be honest, when I saw it, I was like, man, I hope we don't get back to town and she's like the magistrate's daughter or some shit, and she wasn't. I was like, sweet. I was like, good, she's not.
No, that's something that I felt really, really strongly about, and actually was something that I guess this is like kind of like the good side of putting on Royal Road. This is something that we did have kind of like we weren't sure which way to go with it, and I actually felt pretty strongly that I didn't think it. So I think there was two problems. I think like kind of like the noble background, like she's kind of just like a gal, right? Like she's just like, like she's more of like when you think of an elf, there's definitely like different ideas you have of like elves, but she's more of like a gal who she's just like kind of like a normal gal who like likes the outdoors, kind of like not normal, but like you get what I mean. And I feel like that was something I felt very strongly about, and I also felt very strongly that like some of the stuff that happens in the early chapters just doesn't make sense if she's like kind of like a damsel in distress type character, or if she's just like not a very powerful character. She does. There are some like revelations and discussions about her powers and origins that come later on in the story, to explain how she has both her magical training and her kind of her magical genius of being able to kind of like use magic despite being imprisoned. But those are things that I felt very strongly should not have like a very like stereotypical or very common kind of explanation, or not common, like a very the very stereotypical explanations for. And that was actually something that the Royal Road fans felt very, very strongly about, similar to you when they saw this character. So that was one where kind of like what I was saying earlier before, where like there's some parts where I was like, man, I think this is like the right answer, but it was kind of like a whiff. I felt like this was one where I felt pretty strongly that this was the right answer, and it turned out to be a hit. Like I think that's something that was also a lesson to learn from. I was okay, well, like people really liked that she's normal, or that she's So I'm glad that you like that too, because that's something that I actually think about a lot, just because of it having a very strong response on Royal Road when we initially talked about it too.
I'm glad I'm hitting the notes.
Yeah. Just a very random one. That was one that was much scrutinized, just because of So.
Well, all right. I'm going to chime in, but I'm going to let Baz take over here. I feel like I've taken enough of talking time here.
Dude, you're fine. I've had a big old smile on my face the whole time. You guys have been going back and forth. I love it. This is what I'm here for.
I'm glad.
All right. So I have some questions here, but I also want to kind of go over a couple of things that I feel didn't get talked about yet, just to kind of cover all of the basis of the characters and all that thing. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about involving Melina in the beginning of the book and some at the end of the book, what was the idea behind the coral itself, like the cuffs and the cages and things like that?
Yeah, so that's something that, again, it's funny. I think that's something that started out as early installment weirdness, but it ended up becoming a pretty integral part of the story overall. The original idea of it is, it's kind of just being honest, I think the original idea of it is it's a little retroactive explanation, right? Where it's like, okay, they've imprisoned this very, very powerful magical character. How can they do it? Well, there must be some aspect of the world that allows them to do it. And it's like, okay, well, because I think that in a setting without that is the best way to describe it. What would have to happen is that someone like Alden has to then be more powerful than Melina, and if Alden is more powerful than Melina, then how powerful is Chester going to be? And if Chester is more powerful than Alden, then how powerful is the main character going to be as soon as he gets out? Versus if there's some kind of specific thing that is magic nullifying, then there's a way that makes it so that the main character, once he binds with this monster, he'll be able to kind of break this coral and get out. There's kind of like a mechanical idea for it originally, but I think that as the story continued developing, and I think as we continued fleshing out who Melina was as like a character and how come she wasn't just this like damsel in distress character, she has both the tragic backstory that's discussed at the very end of this book, but also as you continues adventuring with Damon throughout books 2, 3, and 4. How far are Baz? How far are you in the story?
I finished book 4 earlier this week before I finished my recap of book 1.
Okay. So as you know, like there's also, in addition to great tragedy to Melina, there's also great there's also kind of great joy to her, and there's very strong emotional character in general. So I think that as this character was continuing to be fleshed out, there was more and more of a storyline about like kind of her beliefs and like kind of like overall like just kind of her desire for freedom for herself and for others. And I think that because of that, the coral ended up becoming like a key story mechanic that is then repeatedly reintroduced in the story. It appears in book 2 as well when Richard had to turn against him, and then it appears again in book 3 when the monsters attempt to use the monster bane net to capture Chester. There's like that variant of that, and it will actually appear again in book 5. So initially a mechanical element of the world that was introduced, but ultimately something that I think ended up becoming kind of like a weirdly symbolic thing in the story. Like, it repeatedly reappears. It's something that Melina, who's one of the main characters, has a serious problem with, and it's something that I think factions using innately says something about a faction, because as referenced early in the story when it happens, Coral is not legal for kind of like in a very like Geneva Convention style sense,
Yeah.
where people are like, well, like, look, like, this can be used against me too. Seems to be like that's the main reason. Like, for example, Duke Harholt or Christian, who I think are kind of in some respects, I wouldn't say always, but they're kind of they have Harholt especially has aspects of like lawful evil to him.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
like, let's not do this. Like, this will cause problems for me too. So yeah.
Oh yeah, you definitely see those aspects of lawful evil come through as well when they're doing the discussion with Franja's father. I can't remember his last name right now.
Yes. I think both. I think the
Shares that.
and that's something that I really liked and that I thought a lot about when writing with the brothers, and it happens in it happens. The brothers have that side to them, and I think that's something that I liked a lot, because it shows, it makes their worldview very different from Damon and Melina's, and it even has some, leads to character conflict when there's stuff that the brothers think is right because of how they were raised that Damon and Melina think is always wrong, and sometimes the brothers are right and Damon is wrong, which is something that I like having that happen too. Like, I like that Damon sometimes has to be like, okay, wait, like, maybe maybe there's a reason why they did this. So yeah.
So, with the whole scene of them starting the fight with the Nightmare and Damon sneaking off to kidnap or to go try and rescue Melina and being unsuccessful initially, what made you guys actually want to play into the whole kind of Franja is this brat that then turns into somebody who is slowly becoming caring and compassionate over time? Was that just something that was like spur of the moment, last minute change? Like, I wanted her to be more abrasive and like her brother and father at the beginning, and then slowly seeing the light of what these people are really like?
So again, that's something that I think that's a change that I would have to give a lot of credit to Cassius for, where I think that that's something where, number one, I think that's something that does kind of happen. You know what I mean? Where it just does kind of. But number two, I think that maybe there's a bit of and I would have to take the negative on this, where I think that there's a bit of a skill issue in how I wanted to portray her at that time, because I do definitely want Damon to see her as a brat, and she sweeps into the dungeon and she's trying to capture him and stuff like that. But the thing that I actually really wanted to convey there is that while Damon thinks of Franja as a brat and he sees her from her point of view, there's also a great courage to Franja, because she sees that there's this invader who is bonded with this monster. Like, she doesn't really understand what's going on here, but she's like, okay, I'm going to bring some guards and try to fight this guy. When she gets kidnapped, she tries to escape, albeit unsuccessfully. And at the end of the story, she is willing to give up her creature comforts, something that I think is a recurring theme of the story. There's other people in the story who, when they realize their wrongdoings, they have to give up their comforts, and they have to learn what life is really like for everyone. And at the end, and as you know in the story, as the story continues, Franja grows as a character in her own right in various ways. So that's what I was really trying to convey. But I think that I kind of whiffed a little bit on that. And I also think that again, this is peeling behind the curtain here and kind of exposing some of the problems. Is that, like, I felt like when we originally finished book one, we were going to leave a lot of the S-Lane characters behind, but then we were like, wait, like, a lot of these, like, I see, this is like a fundamental problem that I think kind of like ends up happening, and this is something that I realized kind of happens in my writing too, is that there's really only so many character dynamics that you can use without the story becoming like kind of confusing or repetitive. And what ends up happening is that we went through a lot of work establishing all these character dynamics in book one, and then it's like, well, he's going to leave and then he's going to find new character dynamics in book two. And some of those I think were hits. Like, I like his relationship with Burning Katrin in book two, for example, because I think that's a little bit different from the other relationships that are portrayed on screen. I like that he's able to spend more time with Chester and all this stuff. But I also feel like that there's like kind of like a problem there where it's like you end up just kind of repeating. You end up. I think the worst thing you can do is having him move from character to character, but ultimately repeating character dynamics. I feel like that gets kind of stale, repetitive, and also feels like kind of spinning the wheels a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that's something that I also. I feel like there's a two-parter there. Where number one, I feel like I didn't quite nail the note of how I wanted to portray Frohan at the beginning, and number two, I feel like the excellent plot points and character beats got resolved a little bit too quickly because they were originally intended to stay there, and you want to give obviously you want to give Frohan a happy ending of having grown a lot, or having given Damon and the brothers like kind of like, okay, well, we'll meet again, and we do mean a lot to each other. But some of that stuff did end up being a little bit rushed because the dynamics were short-circuited to close out book one in that loop. But it ended up being like, we need to explore these dynamics a little bit more anyways. So that's something that I think we could have done better in hindsight. So yeah.
Well, I would like to play the other side of that argument. I actually very enjoyed how you wrapped up everything for book one. Even though like you guys weren't planning on possibly bringing them back for book two or book three or four or whatever, I really enjoyed how you tied it up, because you got to see Franja go from being a stuck-up noble woman to actually befriending Renata and being I want to come hang out with you. I want to cook with you. Let's go be friends. Like, let's go be girls.
Okay.
Like, I loved that part.
No, okay, yeah, I'm glad you like that. I feel like I guess my point is that that is the arc that I want, that I believe is best to happen. But that I think maybe if it was a little bit, I'm glad that you like that. I'm glad that you like where the character's going. But I guess I'm just kind of thinking like, man, what could I have done a little with it? So
there's always going to be those have-beens, would-have-beens, could-be's, all those things.
For sure.
Don't forget to start your car so you don't kill your battery.
Oh yeah. I was gonna say something
so
too.
how do I do that? How do I do that here? Do I just like? Is it? Hang on.
No, I'm talking about your car battery. Like, I don't want you to all get out of here and you're like, I need somebody to come and jump my car.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you can even turn off your light if you like for the moment and just sit in the car with no light on. As you can see from me, I sit in darkness while I do this as well, so it is perfectly fine.
I just turned off my car right here. It was on previously, so I'm just turning off fast. All right.
Okay. I've done that. I've sat there and then oh shit.
Yep, I have.
No,
two.
I appreciate the note. I actually did that once at like 3 hours from my house because I was driving there for a game, and what ended up happening was that they found a kid to jumpstart my car, but the AC didn't work, so I had to drive like 3 hours in like freaking 90-degree temperature, man. So I know it was a nightmare. I was like rolling down the windows on the highway. What's going on over here? So no, I'm thanks for the note. I was not even thinking about that. Highly appreciate it.
Yeah, neither of us want you to be stranded after this nice interview we're having here. All right, so with that wrapping up all of the extra character points I wanted to cover, I just wanted to cover the few that I felt were missed a little bit. Let's get into the actual questions now. We don't have to answer all of these questions. I have, I think, 20 prepared right now. Yes, I have 20 prepared. We don't have to go through all of them. I've already covered one or two, or Hanlon's has also covered one or two.
Some of them have been answered too.
Yeah, exactly. Some of them have already been answered. So, what was you and Cassius's inspiration for the essence and the system itself? Because they're both quite unique. It's not mana, and it's not like an uncaring kind of overlord for the system.
I would have to give credit to Cassius on the essence system. I think he wanted to create something that felt like he said his inspiration for it, which I actually think was very interesting, was basically how like water works, where there's like it's like solid gas. So there's like leveling essence, there's skill essence, and then there's just the essence that's used for spells. I thought that was very cool. So that's just purely given to him. Same thing for the rebirths, purely given to him. I think the thing that I can take a little bit of credit for, or I guess like a little bit more credit for as the story goes on, is number one, developing like kind of like different ideas for how the rebirths actually work, where the idea of like a rebirth being essentially like a rebirth where like your body's like completely reformed and you become optimized for like a new skill set, like in book 3, like the various characters like Melina, Chris, and Damon receive rebirth 3, and then later on in book 5 that I'm writing right now, they then receive Rebirth 4, which again leads to some more very dramatic and exciting changes that I actually think you guys will really like based on our conversation. There's some very, very unique stuff there. And then in terms of the idea for the system, it's not an all-powerful overlord. It's kind of like a, it's kind of like this thing that's still developing sentience in many ways, but is also influenced. There will be some revelations on that, but it's like kind of pulled in different directions where sometimes it's influenced in like a bad way, and it does like something kind of petty, and other times it could be influenced in a good way. It'll do something that's kind of kind. That was just something that I thought would be like a good fit for like the tone of the story. Is the best way. Where I feel like I feel like I didn't want to have like a very generic system where it's just like, oh, there's just like some system and it's like just some female voice that talks to you. And I also didn't want to have like the most I feel like there is kind of like the kind of like experiment system where it's kind of like experimenting on the people, and I was like, well, this seems like a little bit too much here, especially because I feel like in a weird way Chester does take the role of like the system in a lot of stories, where if the system is like a very, very active voice where it's like always like commenting and always telling you stuff. I mean, he already has a guy doing that, so you don't need to have too many voices in the kitchen of Damon's mind, and to just to just have that. So yeah, I was kind of just like thinking really hard about what would fit best for the story.
Yeah, I always liked that the essence was like, yeah, we're gonna hit you with this random window saying, special quest, you have this to do now, good luck. I always kind of liked that, where it was not like invasive, it didn't like actively influence how people wanted it to be or anything like that. It was just kind of like, I'm gonna nudge you in this direction and we're gonna see what happens.
Yes. That's why. So if you've read up to book 3, you know that they introduced the system shepherds there, and I also wanted to make that a very, very imprecise science, where Chomp is also just trying to like kind of divine what the system wants. That's kind of like, again, fitting with my inspiration for that, where it is kind of like a bit of a more fluid, still developing conscience. So yeah.
Yep. All right. Next one. Does Damon have any character traits that you personally have, like just little aspects to how he's written or how he reacts?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. I mean, well, I don't know if we talked about that in the pre-recording part or the actual recording part, like I said, but as I've gotten to know Ryan better, and as I've listened to his interpretation of the character, I think Damon has actually, funnily enough, taken on a lot of traits that I think are very funny or endearing in Ryan Reed. Is more so than myself, like just kind of Ryan's very kind of like Ryan's he's definitely got a very big personality, definitely a very emotive guy, definitely got a very a very generous guy, but also got a very sharp and biting sense of humor, including sometimes like those jokes. I would say that the thing that I think a lot of myself that I put into Damon, that I think a lot of, is more of just how I try to make him kind of like an open-minded, open-hearted person, where when he encounters these new and bizarre situations, he analyzes them and then tries to do what's best for himself and his group of friends, and open-hearted in the sense that he does take in people often as the story goes on, and he does his best to be coexisting with them, like in the best way possible. That's something that I try. That's something I do my best to try to live my life with, although I don't always succeed. But I that's something that I try to do. So I guess that would be it.
I'm the same way, and I relate to Damon in that exact same way, so I understand exactly where you're coming from. And having talked a little bit with Ryan, I see the tiny little aspects of him in Damon too.
Yeah, he gets stronger, and it gets stronger with each book. So yeah.
Yeah, I love it because the way you write Damon it really is just so that Ryan at some points can just flex how talented he is in the role, or how much Damon is actually kind of like him in the real world. I like that a lot.
Yes, increasingly much more so in book 4 after we met, and then book 5 continuing. So yeah.
All right, so we have covered that one. We did Oh, we didn't. We talked a little bit about the absorb, but we didn't actually. Okay, cool. So I got at least 2 more right here, and then I'll have to scroll down and check the rest of them for a second. So with each of the dungeons kind of having this specific kind of theme, which one stood out for you? And this can be either in just book 1 with the 1 dungeon we get, or actually it would be like the 2 dungeons we get in book 1. But you can rip from any of the ones that you wanted that you've done. Which one of them really stands out to you as like your favorite?
I think I have 2. I really liked the Drake dungeon in book 3,
Okay.
because I felt like that was one where I really, not just because of the design of the dungeon, but because it was a chapter where, it was a series where I started really realizing how like I wanted to write these dungeon scenes, which is that there's fights, there's tough moments, there's battles. There's also a lot of opportunities for the party to have like character moments with each other, like when Damon. I believe this is in the Drake dungeon. I might be incorrect actually, where Damon is like, he's like, he's like trying to scout for traps normally, and then Chester jumps ahead and he starts like bouncing all around in his pumpkin form. He's kind of just getting owned by the traps. Or like there's like that moment where he eats the 5-headed drake and he tries to grow 5 heads, and it like causes him to have brain damage, split his brain in 5.
Yeah, Hanlon, so you understand that scene. Chester eats the dragon and then actually splits his brain into 5 different pieces between the different heads. And he literally just can't move, he can't talk, he's sitting there with like all the tongues lolling out to the side because his brain's broken.
It's like that.
Does he turn into that meme of the 3-headed?
Yeah, the dragon.
Basically,
5 heads of the dragon.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's what he basically becomes.
That's funny.
That's what I thought of with that. So that's one that I really liked, because it was one that let me think about how I want to combine all these different ideas, where I'm like, oh, it'd be funny to, like, I was thinking about this, like the dragon meme, but also, okay, well, that's like pretty funny, and that's like something that does fit with Chester's personality, but how would I make that work? But how would I also make this epic? Like, he does get that, you know, he gets like the very fancy helm at the end, and there's this like kind of cool moment where the brothers give it to him, so there's kind of like a character moment that you like. It was just like a dungeon where I got to think a lot about how to like wind all these different things together. And then in terms of dungeon design, one that I really, really like is the underwater dungeon in book 4, where they have to go underwater. They have to fight all these crazy sea, all these crazy like merfolk. They've got all these cannons. They've got all these harpoons. And then at the end, he fights the god of the sea, which is the fancy ship called the god of the sea. Yep. And then Chester has to try to eat it. So there's that was another one where it was just fun to like think about both creating a challenging dungeon to kind of play with expectations, have some funny things happen, have some like. I always try to have like a mix of like I do like having these kind of like modern day references in the series, but I think really hard about how it would look to someone who's in that kind of fantasy world, where, for example, like there's that scene where Damon's like falling through the world and he sees like cars, and he's like, well, these cars are crazy, like they're like super metal carriages that go crazy fast, and it's like, this actually looks pretty dangerous. Or he thinks about like an underwater dungeon, he sees it's kind of like designed to look like kind of like a closed out aquarium, right? Like, but I was like, how would I describe this such that like a normal guy walking in would see this kind of like weird empty aquarium thing where like there's like fish spawning out of the ground. Like, so I was like thinking about that. So I always try to like use like a mix of like modern stuff, imagination, and fantasy to kind of create these dungeons, but I also want to try to make them like I want Damon to be able to see them and like kind of like process them in like a funny way, basically, or like but also like maintaining the threat of them. Like, I'm always trying to think of like ways to make the story funny and enjoyable while maintaining the seriousness, which is a challenge. And I feel like dungeons are a great example of like having to undergo that task. So that's why I like those 2 dungeons the most, because I think that's one where I did like a pretty good job of that. But I'm always trying to like do a better job of that and continue growing. So yeah.
Small little side tangent. You really got to try out Irrelevant Jack. You would love the design that Prax does in that, with the different floors. Okay. Each floor is a different theme, and it all is described by someone who is from our world and then someone who's from that world.
Oh, I really like that.
Yeah,
I will. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. No, I'll definitely have to check it out. I'll definitely have to check that out. I'm always trying to read more stuff to kind of learn new moves, so to speak. Like, I find that now that I've been writing for quite a while now, and I've been thinking about it a lot, I feel like when I read stuff, I can kind of like see what went into it, and I feel like that helps me get a little bit better. So I like that. I'll definitely have to check it out.
So with Chester having the very unique unique skill of absorb. What was the idea behind that, to have it not just be the mass or the like actual personality of the person, but also the skills?
Well, that's something I'll definitely again have to give credit to Cassius for. I know that he really likes these type of like kind of symbiote stories overall. Like as we talked about, he's got two other ones coming out. He also has his Battle World story that was like a symbiote story he worked on before Mimic and Me that he definitely brought in a lot of ideas for. That's one that I actually is I think it's a very iconic ability. And I think it's very I think it's like I think it's cool, and I also really like how in the early arc, like he has to kind of, it's like a puzzle game almost, where he has to like absorb these people and piece together the abilities to slowly make his way out as he gradually grows stronger. But that's also one where I think that I think I don't know if you would, feel this way, but I think maybe I'm a little bit more traditional with the Mimic story, because I like like creative mimicry and transforming and like kind of transforming into stuff. And I think he likes Absorb a lot, because I think he is more of like an overall symbiote enjoyer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's one that definitely that is the inspiration for it. But I think there's some pretty cool ideas from Absorb too, and I like especially in the later arcs where they have to absorb like monster abilities, and then they have to figure out how to use them. Like I think that's like really, really fun. So yeah.
All right. With everything that happened with Renko and Renata and everybody, what was the real reason that Renko actually turned on Damon? Because we don't ever really get the explanation for it.
Yeah, that's one where I think again there's a little bit of kind of early installment weirdness there. So the main reason why Renko turned on Damon is just basically kind of like jealousy and possessiveness of Renata. Like there's definitely like hints that he's like a very, there's some weirdness there, right? Like it's, I mean, I think it's very explicit. It's very explicit in the story later on, but I think that's basically the reason why. But I think ultimately, I think that some of the that's another side of part two that I wish was a little bit better. Part two of the story that I wish was like a little bit better organized. I think that there is like quite a bit of chaos with the different parties hunting him and the bounty hunters and stuff. Because there's bounty hunters from Fallon and his family. There's bounty hunters from Baron Sherazad. There's bounty hunters from Renko. And then there's also like random miscellaneous parties that are just like trying to like because well, that's not true. There's kind of like two parties for Renko, because the initial party that checks him in the dungeon, and there's the other party that he then confronts right before there. So there's just like I think that some of the plots got a little bit tangled, even though there is a cool plot with the Rolo Renata drama. I think is one that's much more interesting to me, and I like that. One thing I do kind of definitely want to have happen in the story is I like that Damon is very gracious to Rolo as he leaves and and endeavors to see him again and thinks about him a lot in the future stories. I like having Rolo as almost like an invisible character, like that kind of voice of wisdom for Damon. But I feel like that is one where I'm like, in hindsight, I was like, okay, well, there's like this entire city at this point, their economy is driven by bounty hunting, so we should kind of figure that. In hindsight, would have figured that one out a little bit more, even though I like that arc individually, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. We've covered most of these other questions I have already, with one way or another from us all talking. Let's go ahead and go with this one. What has been your absolute favorite part of bringing this world to life?
It's a really good question. I really enjoy the dialogue and banter. That's my favorite part. I think that having, like I said, I do think that at times, I think there's a lot of different inspirations for how Chester talks to Damon at different points in time. Like I said, I feel like in the Kukuri fight, I was thinking of like kind of friends jeering as you're like streaming on Discord and they're like messing around with you. But I think there's other where Damon has to like kind of be a mentor to Chester, because Chester, even though he's like this monster, he's just adjusting to human society. So I think there's some like pretty sweet moments there too, where he's like kind of just being like, hey man, like, yeah, this sucks, but let's work hard and get through this together. I think there's times where Chester does that to Damon, where Damon, I think especially as the story starts, he kind of gets to grow into a character. It's like, it's weird. It's like, I think it's like it's not a coming of age story, but it feels, I think, I think about this sometimes where I feel like, obviously, I'm very grateful to be a writer, but I feel like there's some times where I was like, it's like you're working a job you don't like, or you're not really super happy with where your life is right now. You can kind of have like, as you get older, you kind of have that like, I know it sounds weird, but like almost like a later coming of age where you kind of mature more into the kind of person who you want to be. And I feel like Chester sometimes helps Damon do that, where like at the start, if you notice, Chester's like very, very like Damon's like very scared. He's like, I'm not sure what to do, and Chester has to like absorb his fear away from him. But as the story goes on, oftentimes you find Damon to be the one supporting Chester. I feel like there's like a lot of different inspirations for that, but I always, every time I approach every single chapter, because the way their link works, one thing I really like about it for story purposes is that they're able to have dialogue at any time, even though there's action going on in the story. Although sometimes I have to avoid overusing that to make the story not seem too slow. But that's the part I really like the most, and that's one that I put a lot of thought into, because I want to make sure that like this relationship is important to the two characters, and I feel like it's what the fans love the most about the series. It is, after all, called Mimic and Me, so I always try to make sure that that's one that I really make sure to land, and every conversation between them has a purpose, even if it's just goofing off. So yeah.
So I want to just jump in here real quick. With Chester, he strikes me, and I'm just wondering if you drew any inspiration from this. He strikes me as like half Venom and half the dude from Men in Black 2, where the guy that had he had his head. Have you seen Men in Black 2?
So I think that the Venom side is definitely, like I said, is I got to give full credit to Cassius on this. Like I said, he really likes the symbiote stories. He's got a number of other ones that I would suggest people to check out. I do think that I definitely do see the similarities in Venom, although funnily enough, and then the Men in Black 2 I actually have not seen before. I gotta admit it, I've actually seen Men in Black ads. They were very common when I was a kid. I always thought it looked cool, but I've never actually seen it. I'm very
It's a funny watch. You got time.
I should. I definitely need to. I'm very poorly watched in like I said, I grew up watching a lot of Chinese movies and stuff like that. So I'm very poorly watched in the Western canon. I should be checking it out. I see the Venom stuff in Chester, but I think that after having written so many books, I do feel like I've kind of formulated him to like a pretty solid character in my own mind, if that makes sense. But I definitely think his origin and has, there's also, everyone loves large chests. Like there's some of like Boxy in him because of the, the just kind of like the savagery and manicness. I sometimes think of, this is going to be funny, but I sometimes think that Chester and Damon have a relationship like John and Garfield, because Chester's just being very, very lazy. Like that's one that I definitely think about sometimes. But I think that there's a lot of like buddy stories that like are out there. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is some kind of similarity to the second head you were talking about. I'll have to check it out, because that just sounds like fun. And I always saw these ads when I was a kid, watching like Pokemon on WB Kids or whatever. So I should check out Men in Black. I always thought it was cool when I was a kid, so I just never happened to check it out.
It's the second one. It's kind of a goofy character. It's kind of a meld of the two. I mean, that's how I process things in my brain. I say, oh, this is kind of a combination of like this guy and that girl, and I'm sure with like with like what you said that you watched growing up, that there is some kind of tangents between characters. I like this part of this person's personality, and if they have,
Oh yeah, I try to one thing I try really hard to do in Mimic and Me, which is difficult, is I try to communicate like physical comedy through words, which I feel like can be a challenge. But I think some of the scenes that people really like are the ones where I've managed to land that. So that's one that I try to think about a lot, and that's one that will also come into play in book 5. So yeah.
Yes, sweet. I'm so excited for the next one. I also am so excited for your next book with Shammy. Loved the Kronos Warlock series. I'm so excited for you guys to work together too.
Oh yeah, no, awesome. I'm really glad that I'm really glad that you'll like it. Yeah, I'm looking forward to writing that book with her. We do have our we have a crown we have our YA out crown tournament. We did a 3-book series together, and then we also have we're working on a new series right now that I'm very, very excited about. It kind of combines a lot of our past experience with like coaching and teaching, like stuff we did before writing. So I think people are gonna really like that one. I need to work hard at it. It's like kind of like a cozy fantasy.
Yeah, I got to pick up the Royal Crown one. That's on my list as well. A couple of the ones that you guys both have worked on or separately worked on is on there. I got to get them still, but it'll be down the line. Was there a desire to really show how depraved humans can be with how the nobles acted, and how there's such great parallels between the nobles in your book and the nobles that actually existed in the past?
It was definitely something that I thought a lot about, but I don't think it's one thing that I try to I think that there's like definitely a desire to make it like realistic. Like I said, I think that some of the nobles, even the good guys, can have some lawful evil tendencies, or they'll know how to use their power to get what they want. And that's definitely something I wanted to be very realistic to the past. I don't think I really have like a fundamentally negative view of people as a whole, even though I definitely do see that there can be some like very negative things that are done. But one thing I tried to do, not really to so what I'm trying to think of, I don't think this, I'm not really sure how to say it, but I think that in book 1 and in book 3, and in book 2, really in all the books, there's definitely scenes of like the good guys doing stuff that's like also pretty messed up, and I think that that's something that I strive to include, because I think that how do I put it? I think that these are like things that like happened, and like people can make do of it. Like you said, maybe the interpretation of it really is that when people get pushed too far, or when people have too much power, there really is that heart of there is really that depraved heart. Sometimes the way I think about it is more like, is more like, oh, Damon's doing a lot to really like protect his friends here, including things that are like morally ambiguous. Like I kind of think of that as something that happens in like like the spy guy genre. Like I think like James Bond or someone will do something like pretty depraved things, but he's doing it in what he believes to be the service of something that's pretty good. But overall, I guess my point is I don't really think that I was doing that. Like maybe my own belief in what people can do is worse than I even think it is. But I do. The purpose of that was like, okay, well, this really did happen at the time, and what would people think of it? Like, how did people who did stuff like this think about it? Because I think that if I was doing some like pretty like messed up stuff, I don't know if I'd be able to do it. I don't know how I'd think about it. But I did want to think really hard about how Damon would think about it based on what I knew about his character. I wanted to think really hard about how like someone like Christian would think about it, and how it'd be different from how Damon would think about it. And yeah, I did want to think about how like messed up it could be for like someone like Baron Sherzad to do something like that, where he does a lot of messed up stuff throughout the books. So that's so I guess there is an aspect of trying to show how messed up things can be, but also that I wanted to I guess I just didn't want to write that type of stuff lightly. Like I feel like it can be really easy to write that type of thing as like a quote unquote like badass scene, but it's more complicated than that, because there's got to be character motivations in it, especially if it's like a first person narration where you're directly in Damon's head as this stuff happens.
Yeah, I always liked that you guys for example, you guys never really focused on what the main cast was doing in the moment. They just needed to do what was needed to survive, but you got to show that, like, for example, Baron Sherzad is a literal piece of shit who would, take a slave, beat their shit out of them while they're defenseless, and then leave them in a cell to rot.
Yeah.
Alright. With Estlund's treatment of scouts, is that just a normal thing in the whole world of Mimic and Me, where the scouts are kind of looked down upon, or was that just kind of like the Estlund culture of the nobles?
I think it was a combination of a few things. Of number one, trying to this is actually something that ended up removing from the series because it ended up getting a little bit too it ended up getting to be a little bit too arcane, which is that originally there was going to be like different rebirth families, of which the scouts were one of them, and the scouts were but the problem with, and this is ultimately the reason why we changed it, was because it ultimately ended up being too inconsistent, which is that like we couldn't really figure out what families fit into scouts, and there was like a part where like he was feeling a lot of additional resentment towards Fallon, for example, because as an archer, Fallon was also in the scout class, but he was treating him badly. But then I was also like, well, if archers are in the scout class, then why would the scout class be treated badly? Because then they wouldn't be the weakest class; they would have archers in it, right? So there was a little bit of discussion there, but ultimately the reason why the thing that we did keep throughout the series is the idea that like certain utility classes were looked down upon, of which the scout was one of them, because then that was like a way to continue the consistency of what we originally wanted to portray, which is basically the idea that the system will randomly give you a rebirth, and sometimes it can be a very bad one, and you don't have agency in that, and when you get a bad rebirth, you're going to end up being treated kind of like as a servant, or people are going to deliberately, like one thing that I really did want to communicate with Damon's character is just the overall idea that there's like a lot of people out there in the world who have like great potential but aren't able to act on it because of their circumstances, right? So as you see, as the story keeps going, Damon ends up growing stronger and stronger. He ends up being able to display this kind of brilliance that was always hidden beneath the surface, because, you know, obviously, as you see in the first few chapters of book one, he's an extremely intelligent, extremely creative guy, but he's not even able to do it originally without Chester helping him out, because he's so frightened, he's so beaten down by what's going on around him. So at the end, he blossoms into this guy. What I originally wanted to do was just be like, okay, well, this guy is like stuck in this lower class for whatever reason, and he eventually has to break out of it. So there was some, like I said, early installment weirdness, and I liked the idea of like the rebirth families, but we couldn't quite figure out, like, it wasn't really, I guess the real fundamental problem was it just became too difficult to figure out, okay, it is cool that there's like a rebirth family that's looked down upon, and that Damon can ultimately grow to be the hero of this type of rebirth family. But the problem is that, like, okay, so are like if you divided it by like utility classes, right, then maybe healers are in the class. So you end up in this like kind of awkward, you get what I'm trying to say, you end up in this kind of awkward territory where you're not really able to kind of cleanly define it, and then it just felt a little bit too weird to be like, Damon's in the miscellaneous family. That's like the one that everyone dumps on. It's like, well, like, let's be a little bit, let's figure out, So that's basically the long and short of it. But I would say that what ends up happening, funnily enough, is that in the later books, as you see the real group of people who suffer from weakness are like basically the people who didn't have rebirths to begin with, and Damon has to end up helping them out. So that's ultimately what that idea became, basically, for lack of a better explanation. Because at the start of the story, Damon is still looking for combat abilities. He's deliberately, people keep that away from him because he's still useful to them, because he's got all these trapping abilities and he's got all this intelligence, and they're trying to deliberately keep him from getting a weapon, and they're trying to keep him from getting a damage ability because they want to keep him down, so they keep like using him for cheap, basically. So that's what that idea ended up evolving into.
Awesome. All right, with that, we have pretty much covered all of my questions that I had in one form or another. Hanlons, do you have anything that you would like to ask at this point?
No, you touched on some of the things that I wanted to ask. You covered them, and and Ryan went into some explanation about it, specifically about like I was going to ask if there was like an overarching theme kind of thing, and I think that fell into the like.
I think there's kind of like an underdogs, kind of like the guys in the store are kind of like definitely like So
I think you just went through and answered it, kind of like that's the kind of the point you're getting across is this, like, depending on. Just because you're stuck in some particular circumstances doesn't mean you can't rise given the
exactly. Something that exactly.
Awesome.
No, I love it.
Yeah. No, awesome.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you guys having me on. It's been a really fun conversation. I really enjoy talking about books in general. I look forward to checking out your work. It's probably gonna have to be a couple weeks. Like I said, this is like my the busiest time of the year for me. Funnily enough, like the busiest time of the year when I focus on the job that's not really my job. But I look forward to checking it out, and I'll definitely be in touch as I look to get back on Roll Road. I think it's a great site. I love the community there, and I love how many people are working to write there. I think it's I think it's been great for the little RPG genre. I think it's just been great in general. I've read like so many great stories from there and met so many cool people just in the fan comment section from there. So yeah.
Yeah, it's been an experience for sure. I've been on there for about a year now, and
Oh, awesome! Congratulations.
and so like, what's that?
No, congratulations. That's I.
Oh yeah, no, thank you. Yeah.
This continuous store for years, very very impressive. That's awesome. That's awesome.
So yeah, no, it's been a learning experience. You figure out what you're writing. You don't know what the fuck you're doing in the beginning.
Oh,
you're
yeah.
like, I'm
No,
just gonna write this
100%.
story, and then you figure out kind of this is my style. And
Yes.
so it's been rough. Don't get me wrong, but it's been a learning curve that I feel like I've gotten my flow now. I even tell in the beginning, I'm like, listen, people, the first 20 or 30 chapters, just bear with me because I'm figuring it out. But after that, like, it starts to make sense and it starts to flow better and whatnot.
I love
So yeah,
that. Oh, I'll have to check it out. Awesome.
without Royal Road, I don't know that I would have been able to been. I don't know that I would have been motivated to write.
Yeah.
You know?
Because I feel like that's what, like, again, I said I have a lot of regrets over not posting the rest of Mimicking Me on Royal Road, because I feel like even if you just got those few fans who are rooting for you, those guys who are rooting for you, man, like, you don't, that's not something that, like, I remember when I first started writing, that's something where I'm just like, man, you got like a couple people just rooting hard for you. That's crazy, and it's so appreciated. So no, I completely agree with Tang. That's why I'm eager to, like I said, when the season ends, to get back on, because I completely agree with you.
Awesome. Now I hope, yeah, if you do read it, any feedback is welcome.
No, I will. No, I will be. If I don't get back to you in a few weeks, just like, I'm not even joking, just shoot me a note. It's because, like I said, until the end of until like halfway through November, when the playoffs end, that's when I'm just at my busiest. So yeah, but like as you can tell by the fact that I'm doing this interview in a car parked after our in a random law after our practice. So yeah, but I really look forward to checking it out. I think it's been great. So yeah.
I'll send you a message to remind myself to send you a message.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay. I do have a bit of a drive home, so I'll have to catch you guys later. But thank you very very much for having me. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, man. So, and
yeah, great, dude. Thanks for answering all the questions. Safe travels.
Please.
Thank you.